Hey guys, this video is going to go over linear equations that are written in this form, y equals mx plus b. So you definitely want to take some notes on this. I'd put the title linear equations in your notes and then kind of watch this first example and you'll see how it goes. Alright, so I have an equation that I already graphed for you. So I have this equation, y equals 2/3 x plus 2. I made a table, and you guys know how to make a table. We've done this plenty of times, and I graphed it. Okay, so now here's what I am going to be doing. I am going to be looking at my equation and seeing how it relates to the graph. Okay, so this is super important. So first thing I want you to do is see if you can find the slope of this graph. So let's pick 2 points. We can do any 2 points that we want. I'll just take these 2. And let's see if we can find the slope. So we need to do the rise over the run. So it looks like I go up 2, and I go over 1, 2, 3. So it looks like my slope is 2/3. I'm just going to write that down for now. Okay, so my slope is 2/3, and it's positive because the line is going up from left to right. Okay, now the next thing I want you to find on this graph is the y, any of the special points. Well, here's one special point. It's called the y-intercept. The coordinates are 0, 2. Okay, this is called the x-intercept, and this one is -3, 0. Okay, so those are a couple special points on my graph. All right, now I want to show you a couple things when anytime you're graphing an equation and it makes a line, what kind of happens? All right, so here's the first thing I want to point out to you. If we go ahead and look at this equation, do you guys notice that what I'm timesing the x by, this 2/3, that is the same as the slope? So whatever you're multiplying the x by, if it's a 2, if it's a 4, if it's a 2/3, that number that you're multiplying by, that's called the slope. Okay, then I want you to look at this 2 in the back here, what we're kind of adding on. That number, if you look over at the points, do you see this point 0, 2, or this 2 right here? This number right here, the y-intercept, is always what you're adding on at the end. So my y-intercept is at 0, 2, or I went up 2. That's what's going to be added on. All right, so I would like you to add this to your notes. Okay, so anytime we have a linear equation, now again, this only works for equations that make lines when you graph them. They can be written in this form, y equals mx plus b. Okay, so when they're written in this form, there's a couple special things. So this m, this is a letter that stands for the slope. So whatever you're timesing that x by, that number is the slope, which is also, I want you to kind of put, that's also the unit rate if we're working with a word problem, or the rate of change. Okay, now this number that you add on or that you subtract, this is always going to be the y-intercept, or it's also going to be kind of the number that you start with, the extra amount that gets added on. So again, that's going to stand for the y-intercept. So if you kind of look here, we had this one, y equals 2/3 x plus, I think it was 2. Okay, so if we look at that right here, we can see that it's still written in this form up here, y equals mx plus b. And this number, the 2/3, that's the m, or the slope. And the 2, that's the b, or the y-intercept. So let's take a look at another one. And again, I already graphed this one. So if we kind of take a look at it, it's y equals 1/2 x minus 2. I made a table of points. I graphed some of it. Okay, first thing I want you to do is let's see if we can find the slope of this line. So I'm going to kind of see how much I go up. I go up 2. All right, and then I went over 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 over 4. Okay, then I want us to find some special points. Now my special points are already labeled. Here's my y-intercept, and then here's my x-intercept. Okay, now I want you to come look up at the equation. Let's see how this relates. You see this 1/2 here? That's what I'm timesing the x by. That actually gives me the slope. Now, look at the slope we found, 2/4 and a half. Is that the same thing? Well, if you simplify 2/4, if you divide by 2, you do get 1/2. So the slope is 1/2. And then this minus 2 in the back here, where does that come from? Well, if you look down at the picture, that's the coordinates of the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is always 0, something, and it's -2 here. So this kind of tells you where the graph starts, -2, That's the y-intercept. Let's take a look at another one. Okay, so again, I have an equation. I graphed it already for us. Y equals 3x. I made a table, put some points on. Okay, let's go ahead. First thing, let's see if we can find the slope. Now, this graph's a little tricky. Do you guys notice that it's counting by 2's as we go up? So we kind of have to be careful. Going across, it's counting by 1's. So if we're doing the rise, we got to figure out how much should I go up between these 2 points. Well, this is at 3, and I went up to 6. So it looks like my rise was 3. Then I just went over 1. So my slope is 3 over 1. Now, there is a special point on here, and it's right here. This is the x and the y-intercept, and the coordinates are 0, 0. Okay, let's kind of look and see how this relates to our equation up here. So we had y equals 3x. Well, first thing, this number 3 here, you'll notice that's the same as the slope over here. Now, we wrote it as 3 over 1. That's the same. I could put 3 over 1 over here, too. It's the same thing. You can always add a 1 underneath there. So there's the slope. That's kind of like the rate of change, the unit rate, what it's changing by. Okay, now, I didn't have a y-intercept back here. It didn't say plus anything, but I could have added a plus 0 here. Okay, now that would show me what the y-intercept was. So just because it doesn't have a number, that 0 is still there, but that's what the y-intercept is. All right, let's look at one more. Again, I graphed it already. Here's the equation. Here's the table. I graphed it already. So let's go ahead, let's come up to our graph and let's find the slope. So I'm just going to pick 2 points. Looks like I go down 1. If I go down 1, I'm going to write -1. Then I go over 2 to the right. So my slope is -1/2. Okay, special points. I see a couple of them on here. So I'm just going to label them up here. One of them is 0, -1. There's my y-intercept. And here's my x-intercept, -2, 0. All right, so if we go ahead and try to look at our equation, y equals -1/2 x minus 1. If we look at this first part, -1/2, that's the slope. Okay, so that matches up there. And then this -1 in our equation at the end, if you look up here, that's the y-intercept, that -1. So if I gave you an equation, let's say I gave you this one, y equals -1/4 x plus 2. You should be able to tell me a couple things about this equation just by looking at it. So the first thing you should be able to tell me is whatever I'm timesing by, whatever that x is timesing by, that's the slope. So now I know right away that that's just the slope, just by looking at it. And then this number that I'm adding on at the end, you should be able to tell me that that's the y-intercept. So the coordinates of the y-intercept are always going to be 0, whatever, and this one is 0, 2. Now I just want to kind of relate this back to when we were doing those tile patterns. The number we were timesing the x by, that was kind of the growth factor. That's the same thing as slope. So that always gave us the growth factor. That still stays the same. This number at the end that we added, that was in figure 0. Well, that's the same as the y-intercept because it's 0, whatever. So that still works there. Let's look at one more. So if I gave you this one, y equals -2/3 x minus 4. Let's think, what could you tell me about this line? Well, first thing you should be able to tell me is there's the slope. That's the rate of change. That's what it's changing by. Second thing you should be able to tell me is this -4. That's the y-intercept. So the coordinates, again, are always going to be 0. I go over 0, and then how much do I go up or down? Well, I went down 4, so it's 0, -4. If I just sketch that out real quick, that's where the point would be, 0, -4. All right, so if you're confused on anything, please go back and rewatch a few examples, or please ask your teacher for help.